Okay, welcome back. This next section, which I call mind-blowing math, we haven't done previously at Master Trader programs. This is the first time, although I have shared this with some of our clients and our MPA members, and it has been quite enlightening and empowering. So as you've probably figured out by now, I mean, I try to quantify everything, and I really dig into the mathematics behind my trading, and that guides me. I really want to know the math behind the trading. I really want to know where I stand at all times, and I want to have a path where, if I'm going to climb a mountain, I want to know where are the base camps, how many, how far do I have to climb, what's it going to take me, what are the resources I'm going to need to get to each of those base camps and then ultimately get to the summit. I try to map everything out as best I can and really take away as many surprises as I can. And by doing that and searching for these answers and searching for the truth, I have stumbled upon some really amazing findings that what it showed me is that triple digit returns and big returns and keeping drawdowns low and all these things that I've talked about over these number of days is really not nearly as hard as I thought it was, as I originally thought it was, although it does take a lot of work and it definitely takes expertise. Once you get that, it's really not as difficult as one would think or as it would appear. And today I'm going to show you, and we're going to talk about that, and we're going to break it down. And I think you're going to really feel quite empowered and quite optimistic that you too can achieve these big returns and do really great in the market. Although remember, it's going to take time. It's not going to happen right away. I don't want you to leave thinking you're going to do this tomorrow or next month, because it's going to take some time to learn everything. Each year at the Master Trader program, I always ask a question at the very end. I ask for a show of hands, and my question is how many people, now that you've been here and you've gone through all the curriculum and you've learned all this from me in these past several days, how many people right now, show of hands, how many people right now feel they can fire up their trading account and in the next 12 months lay down a triple digit return? And usually it's not very many hands that go up. Every year it's just a fraction of the room, although in the last couple of years it was a little bit more. The last few years we did it live, but still a fraction of the room. I'm talking like 5, 10, maybe 15%. So my next question that I ask everybody is, I say, show of hands, if I were to give you a recipe for a lemon cake, and I gave you the recipe and I asked you to go home and bake it, how many people think they can go and they can bake that lemon cake? Well, then pretty much every hand in the whole room goes up, right? So the thing to remember is that there's really nothing different. I've just given you the recipe. And while it's definitely harder, it's more difficult and takes more expertise than baking a lemon cake, it still is a process, and there's a recipe for it. And if you follow the recipe and you learn how to put those ingredients together, you will bake your own lemon cake, and you will come out with a nice finished product. And that's the same thing with trading. So this first example here, it's not the greatest. I don't think it's the greatest explanation or graphic, but I haven't come up with a better one yet. So this is what I've been using. But we're gonna make some points here, and when we're finished with this mind-blowing math section, you're gonna see how this all comes together, and really it is quite incredible. So just think of all these dots here that you're seeing on this slide as individual stock trades. Okay, the red dots are losses. The green dots are gains, of course. Now, this is a stock trader. Okay, we'll say it's stock trader A, and this stock trader has done 124 trades. It could be over any period, doesn't really matter, but we'll just call it a year. And you can see that half of these dots, or I'll tell you that half of these dots are red, half of them are green. So it's 50-50, right? 50% of them are profits, 50% of them are losses. Now, it's not really that important what each individual dot stands for as far as the gain or loss. what we're going to look at here is what's the average of all the green dots and what's the average of all the red dots. And the average of all the green dots in this example is going to be a 12.5% profit. The average of all the red dots is a 6.25% loss. So what that simply means is that you have a 2-to-1, right? Your reward is 2 times your risk. And that's exactly what we're shooting for. We'd like to have that minimum for swing trading at least. Now, let's assume that this trader was able to do that, right? 12.5% versus 6.25%, 50-50. But each of these trades were done individually, and there was never more than 25% exposure on a 25% position size. So that means that if you had a $100,000 account, you bought $25,000 worth, and you had $75,000 in cash. Okay, so now if that stock went up, and let's say it's one of these gains, you would now have, of course, more money for your next position, would be a 25% position of that new balance. And we're compounding here. Okay. So if we did this, now we're never ever more than 25% exposed, always 75% cash. All right. So if we did this and we and we put this string of trades together, the final result would be a 96.5% return. So we'll call it 100%. That's close enough, about 100% return. So my question is, we're going to now make a little change in this approach. But the only thing we're going to change is we're going to allow you to go into all 4 positions at any given time when they're available. So in the first example, you could never, ever have more than 1 stock long. So until you sold that stock, you couldn't go into another one. So you always maintain 75% cash. In this situation, you can buy 4 stocks, which is 100% exposure. So you can take 25% times 4. Now, of course, you can't go any more than that, right? That's 100%. And we're going to still do only 124 trades. So the 124 trades could get done quicker because you're able to do 4 at a time now, where before you had to wait for each trade, right? So that's the benefit of this, is that you could get it done quicker. But the question is now that we've go to 100% exposure, and we have the same numbers, average gain 12.5, 6.25, 124 trades, 50-50 profitable, what is the total return now? So while you're thinking about that for just a second, we're going to come back to this concept, but I'm going to tell you the answer now. But we're going to come back to this concept. We're going to circle back after we go through a few more slides. The total return will be exactly the same. All right. So when I say we're going to come back to this, we're going to come back to this where I'm going to show you how, again, what you would normally think and what seems logical or what you would normally think you need to do is not necessarily true. All right. So let's move on. Let me show you something. What I'm trying to show you right now is the power of the numbers, the power of compounding, the power of doing things in a certain way that you could achieve your goal without a lot of risk. And like I said, you've got to get your mind off of certain things and focus on the right things. And this is what the whole time I'm trying to get you to understand what to look at: trend, your consolidations, the earnings, the sales, all these things that you need to look at that are the aspects or the catalyst for stocks to move, right? So, and avoid the situations that are low probabilities. Okay, but also we talked about a lot of math, cutting losses, and the math behind the risk reward relationship. This is where it gets even more important, because this is where you really put all that together. And like I said, the spreadsheet, the math starts to work its way into your trading. And this is exactly where you're going to start to see where you don't have to panic and this FOMO, this feeling this pressure. This is one of the big enemies of trading. And it's because you don't understand the math. You don't understand how much time you have and how it's not that difficult to get to your goal if you're patient and you do the right things. Instead, you're feeling this pressure, and it's an illusion. It's an illusion. All right. Let me show you something right here. And again, it's gonna light bulbs are gonna really start going off. So I call this the road to triple digit return. So there's 253, give or take a day or so, 253 days in a trading year. We can call this 253 days. We can call it 253 trades, whatever you want, however you want to put it, right? We'll just call it 253 trades, but we can say, let's say you just did a trade a day for 253 days. Okay, so in this example, we're going to assume that out of those trading days, 216 of them, right? 216 of those trading days, you're going to be at break even. Whether you went up 100%, down 50, however you got there, at the end of those over 216 trading days, you're going to be at break even. Or let's just say you're out of the market. You broke even simply because you didn't do anything. So you stayed out of the market 216 days out of the year, or 216 trades out of 253 trades. Okay, now that leaves 37 days left over, or 37 trades. That's 14.36% of the trading days, or of the trading time. So assuming that you're in cash, or you're breaking even 85% of the time, if you could get 2% on your money in over 37 days, so you had 37 days out of the year, we'll call it, where you were up 2%, you would make 107%. Now, like they say on TV, wait, there's more. It does get much better than this, because you're thinking, oh, okay, well, 2%, that's a lot to get my whole account up 2%. No, okay, let's break that down. So if you took a 25% position, right? You took a 25% position, just like we said in that first example. What would it take to get 2% on a 25% position? The answer is an 8% gain. So now to get that 2%, what you need to do is you need to find a stock, put 25% of your money in it, 75% cash, and have it go up 8%. If you can do that 37 times in a year and break even the entire rest of the year, you make 107%. Doesn't sound as hard now, right? Now, the other thing that's really interesting about this is that if you could find 37, well, let's just think of it this way. Do you think you could find over an entire year, do you think you can find 37 stocks that go up 8%? The answer is absolutely. I mean, you could probably find 37 stocks that go up 8% in a month. However, could you find 37 stocks that meet your criteria and that you can hold and capture 8%? Absolutely. Absolutely. That's not a big goal. That's not a big goal at all. So again, breaking it down, this is what we call breaking it down to the ridiculous, where you really break everything down and really see how do these numbers, how can we get to that big number? It's just like looking at that mountain and looking at the top. It looks so high way up there. But when you start thinking of it as, I have to go up to this first base camp, and then I go there, and you break the mountain down, all of a sudden it becomes very doable, right? As long as you break the challenge down, you don't let the big giant goal overwhelm you, and you break it down into increments that are achievable. So let's just do a little bit more math. Let's take it down even more. Say, okay, well, that's a big goal. We'll say 70% of is your goal. All right. So the question is, can you find 27 stocks that go up 8%? Meanwhile, remember this, you're 75% cash all the time. You're never, ever more than 25% invested. Now that really should blow your mind. All right. That's mind blowing. All right. So now you're only in the market or profitable 10.67% of the time. 90% of the time, you're either out of the market or you're break even. So if you just stayed out 90% of the time, which is, like 10 months out of a year, and you were only in the market for a couple months, and you could find 27 stocks, 27 trades that went up 8% on 25% of your money, you'd make 70% on your money. Let's break it down a little bit more here. So how about for a 40% return, which over the long term would be spectacular, right? If you can compound your money at 40%, people are happy to get 20%. Now we're down to 17 days. 17 days. We're down to less than 8% of the time you need to be in the market or profitable. So now if you can 8% of the time, 17 days out of an entire year of 253 days, 236 days, you're out of the market or you're break even. If you can find 17 stocks that go up 8% on only 25% of your money, you're up 40%. And one last, we'll do 30%. Now we're down to only 5% of the time. You're out 95% of the time. You're starting to get my drift here, right? 13 days. Can you find 13 trades that go up 8% on 25% of your money in the entire year? Okay, so let's say you think, well, wow, that I could probably find that in a couple months. All right, so let's say once a quarter. If once a quarter you can find 13 stocks that go up enough to give you 2% on your money, 8% on 25%, 4% on 50%, 16% on 12.5%, however you want to break that number down. If you can achieve that goal, well, then you'd be making 30% every 3 months. This is how I make those big returns. This is how I've won the US investing championships. This is how it's done, by understanding this math. Now, keep in mind, never in these scenarios did we ever risk more than 25% of our money. This goes back to the beginning, and there's the two things I want you to get here. One is that you don't have to be invested all your money all the time. You don't have to be in this hurry to get all your chips in the center of the table. This is a false, this is an illusion that you have to get all the money in there. Okay, and the goal is not as hard to reach as you think if you break it down. Now, the key is that, of course, that you're not losing big. See, you're net breaking even. So even if you have, winners and you have losers, they're just not where the losers. You're having these big losers and you're getting hurt and you're getting into some deep hole. You're breaking even all this time. This is why jockeying for position. And, if you were to watch my trading, some people, they'd say, what's this guy doing? I mean, he's going in and out and in and out and in and out, taking all these small losses. Yes, I'm trying to just position myself. This is about position yourself to exploit asymmetrical leverage, asymmetrical volatility, where you're cutting off the volatility on the downside and exposing yourself to the upside. But that you're going to have to take lots of shots at that. It's not going to happen right away. It doesn't happen every time. But as long as you keep exposing yourself to the other side of the volatility, and you cut off the downside, well, you've got asymmetrical leverage now. So it's the same thing as if on my flip of my coin, I take a coin. If I know that coin is going to go heads 50% of the time, tails 50% of the time, the key is to just lose less on heads than I make on to lose less on tails than I make on heads. That's it. That's the goal. Even if let's just say the coin was bent and it goes 30% on heads, 70% on tails. Well, now the goal is still to lose less on tails than I make on heads, adjusted for the batting average. So now it may, instead of having a 2-to-1, I need maybe a 3-to-1 or a 4-to-1. And I still would be net making $1 on heads for every 50 cents I lose on tails. See, the math, it all comes down to this math. It all comes down to managing the risk-reward relationship. It all comes down to managing that. And then how many times can you turn that edge over? So I'm breaking it down where we only need 37 trades, and you only need to do that 37 times profitably. Right, profitably 37 times and break even all the rest of the times to get to that 100%. See, now that's doable. That's doable. Now, if you run your numbers and it's going to take you 2,000 trades to do that, that wouldn't be doable. So we got to find that sweet spot. I've already done all the work. I've already done all this work. I've been doing this for almost 40 years. I've done all the work. I'm giving you all the numbers. I'm giving you the approach, the system. I'm giving you all the rules. Now you have to learn how to use them. You have to learn how to use them. But this is what makes you buy into the approach. You have to buy into the approach. If you don't understand the math behind it, not only are you not going to be able to execute it properly and understand what you're doing and keep things into perspective, but you're not going to believe in it. You're not, and this is what we're really trying to do here, is to educate you on all the variables that what you need to do, but also what you need to understand. So now, if you take a look right here, you see 13, 8, 2, 5, 17, 27, 37. This is your formula. This is your formula. Just think of it in this terms. I want to make 30%. Let's just say it's in 3 months. All right. We're going to break it down to, we're just going to have a 3-month goal. Okay. I need to find 13 stocks that go up 8% and 25% of my money. That's my goal. That's my goal right there. 13,825 is your goal. You want to make 40%, 17,825 is your goal. You want to make 100%, 37,825 is your goal. This is the terms you have to think of. Forget about stock picking. Forget about all this other stuff. That's the easy part. You got to manage the risk. You have to manage the trade and manage the risk and manage the positions, and have this math make its way into your thinking. Whether this is based on long-term investing or day trading, it's all going to come down to this. This is the holy grail. Now, do you remember? For some of you who follow me on Twitter, I had this tweet recently. All right, it says the power of compounding is amazing. Consider this. I'm currently up 277%. This is referring, of course, to my U.S. investing championship performance as of October, I guess. That's 23% away from 300%, right? Okay. No, it's not. I actually need a 6.2% gain to get to 300%. If I did return 23%, I would have a 363.7% return. So 300 minus 277, isn't that 23? No, because we're compounding. But let me show you what this actually means. Again, this is very powerful. And this is, again, how you get the big returns. But you have to understand, because there's a downside to this. Just as your compounding works on the upside, it works on the downside. So as you're needing less to get a bigger return, you're needing less to get a smaller return. It's going to have that impact. So let me explain to you what I call the power factor. So in this example, we're starting with $100. It could be $100,000, whatever you want to call it. We're starting with 100 basis, right? Times 30%. We make 30% on our money. We have $130. We have $130, right? So now that is 30 for 30, right? We make 30%, we tack on 30% to our return. Okay, but now we have $130, right? So now when we make that same 30% again, it now is going to give us $39. We're going to go to 169 now. We're going to have $169, not $160. Why? Because we're compounding. We're compounding on that new number. So now we're essentially getting 1.3 to 1. Right? We're, instead of getting 1 to 1, we're 30s for 30. Every 30% is going to give us 39%. So now we compound from there, another 30%. Okay, so now 30% is going to give us 50.7% on our original $100. So now we're getting 1.7 to 1. So for every 30% we earn on that new balance, we're now getting 50.7%, right? Now, one more time, 30%. On that new balance. That's going to give us 65.91%, 2.21 times. Now we're getting 2.2 times for every 30%. We're getting 2.2 times, and now that brings us up to a return or a total return of 285.61%. Okay, now what does this mean? Well, it means that compounding is very powerful, right? And it also means that if we go in reverse and we were to lose 30%, we're losing 30% on that bigger number. But the powerful thing to this is that as you get a bigger number becomes easier. Just as a bigger loss becomes easier, a bigger number. Now, we're going to cut that loss off. We're going to do everything we can to have asymmetrical leverage, right? Asymmetrical volatility. Remember I said we're always looking to increase, we're always looking to improve our worst case scenario. Backstopping, stop losses, nailing down profits into strength. All the math, everything is all around improving our worst case scenario and constantly cutting off the downside and exposing ourselves to the upside. Well, same thing works here with compounding. So let's take a look here. So now we want to get to, once again, about, let's say 100% return, right? That's my big numbers. I want to get to a triple digit return. That's what I've always shot for. My whole trading career was always about getting those triple digit returns. So now we start off $100, 30% brings us to 130, right? Okay, so now we're getting 1.3 times. But we're now, in order to move ourselves up the ladder here, because we're now dealing with the compounding effect, we actually only need a 20% profit now, right? To move that needle, because we're getting 1.3 times. So 20 is going to get us 26. Now we're at $156, right? We're at $156. So now we need even less, because a 15% return is going to give us 23.4. And as we move up here and we go one more time, 10% is going to give us 17.94. So now we get to that 197.34% value here on the right side, which is a 97.34% return. That's essentially 100%, right? So what happens though is, look at how I have to get progressive. I can get progressively more conservative. I can return 30%. Let's just call these quarters. We'll say this is the first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter of the year. So first quarter, if I return 30%, now if I return 20%, then 15, and then 10, I get to that 100%. Now, of course, if I did 30, 30, 30 or bigger numbers, it would be much bigger, right? But the goal, the example here is to show you, and this is exactly what just happened to me in the U.S. Investing Championship. Once I got up big, I can now be a lot more conservative, and I can improve my worst case scenario. I can constantly improve my worst case scenario, and it takes me less work to get that big return. So the key is that not losing, not going down much. If you can just even break even and wait to tack on these returns, as long as you're moving yourself up, the road is getting easier for you. It gets harder when you go in reverse and you lose, because losses work geometrically against you. And now the same compounding effect is going to have a negative effect, because a 10% loss is going to account for more than a 10% of your original number, because now, of course, you're coming off of a new basis. So again, really powerful to understand, because as you're trading, when you first think about it and you say, wow, I only need to come up with, 13 days out of the year, make 2%, 25% position size is 8%. That's totally doable. And I'm up 30%. Once you start doing that, you might do that in a couple of weeks or a month or two and say, wait, I might be able to do this a couple times a year. Now it becomes even more achievable. And now you do it a couple times a year and you're up 70% for the year. And now everything becomes achievable, right? You start to learn, wow, what this is actually, there's a lot of opportunities that I can do this a lot more than this number that I just laid out here in this example. So that's the first thing that's powerful. The second thing that's powerful, and that tells you, the second thing that's powerful that tells you that you can be conservative, is that you don't have to be fully invested. Those numbers are with only 25% invested and never being any more than 25% invested. So you don't have to be in this rush. And now, once you start moving up the ladder, this example shows you how, once again, you don't have to be in this crazy rush, because now it gets easier. It gets easier. So now, instead of having to find those stocks that are, give you X percentage, you can find stocks that give you even less percentage, because you have to earn less percentage. All right. Let's talk about another thing here. So real quick, this is one that I was going to leave out, but this is another new slide. But I want to talk to you real quick about how the thing you have to understand is that when you look at any one of these concepts separately, you can probably by now you're going, wow, this is powerful stuff. This is powerful stuff. And there's probably one slide or one concept that you really keyed on personally, and you said, you got it. You're like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. But here's the real power. The power is that when you put all of this together, okay, any one of these concepts is super powerful. But just think about when you put them all together, and you start getting these all to work synergistically. And this is where it gets, the power just goes exponential. All right. So here's I'm going to show you another slide here, or another example that is going to show you all by itself, It's very powerful. But all of these things facilitate the other. They all, it's a domino effect, and it's even more than a domino effect because it's an exponential effect because of compounding. So some of you have played poker. You probably know the term saving bets. This is something, again, poker has really taught me a lot about trading, and vice versa. But poker is something that I played a lot of poker in my days and still love poker. And a lot about poker is pretty much the same with trading. Certainly about risk reward management and being throwing away, hands probabilities and throwing away hands that have degraded in value. Same thing as folding a stock and taking a loss. But there's something that's referred to as saving bets. And this is what really, really made me understand the power of not losing, the power of small things. Like when I first started trading, commissions were hundreds of dollars per trade. They eventually came down to where they were $60 per trade, and I was like, "Wow, we're saving a ton of money." It was very evident that that amount of money saving was going to come back to you, and that would be money in your pocket. But then commissions came way down. They came down to like $20, $15, $10 at as much as recently down to $5 and even free now with these brokerage firms that offer free trading. However, when they got down to where they were down to $10 or $15, we still didn't understand the power of little tiny changes or little savings, because what happened was we were able to trade way more. So now instead of doing 100 trades a year, I'm doing 500 trades a year. I'm doing 1,000 trades a year. I mean, there's years where I did thousands and thousands of trades per year. So now you take that 1,000 times saving $5, right? Now it's starting to add up. So I started to look at all these little things and said, if I started adding all these where I'm losing, I'm losing little bits of money here and there. It's the same thing as poker. So I'm going to give you an example here. Online poker, you'll play something like this is something you can pull from, you can Google. You'll play like 75 hands, 60 to 70, 80 hands an hour. All right. So let's call it 60 hands per hour on a 9-person table. All right. So you're a poker player. You're a professional poker player, right? And you start looking at your playing, and you make the occasional bad call, and you make some bad moves every now and then. So, and this is something that I did, and I started analyzing. I actually started tracking. I had a little pad with me, and while I was playing poker, I started tracking how many bad calls I made. Where you're not supposed to call, but you say, you know what? I'll throw in $10, and I'll give a call. You didn't play textbook perfect. So I said, let me see if I played. If I did play textbook perfect, what am I giving up? What are all those little tiny, are they even worth it? Is it even worth it for me to take that shot every now and then, or to break my rules? So I started adding this all up. So in this example, let's say we're playing in it, and for those of you that don't know poker, this might not hit home with you right away, but you'll get the example. Let's say I'm in a 10-25 game of no hold'em, 60 hands per hour, 10% of those hands, 6 hands per hour, I make a bad call. I make a bad call, one bad call per hand at $25. So that's costing me $150 an hour, right? $150 an hour I'm making in bad calls. Take that 8 hours a day I'm playing, 5 days a week, it's $6,000 a week, $314,000. That's a pretty good living, right? Okay, so let's look at that as trading, right? Let's take a look at it in trading. So for those of you who know me, if you're a client of mine, come to the Master Trader program before, I always say, don't chase the stock up. Don't pay more than X amount above the pivot point and so forth. Okay, so what is that costing you? What is that really costing you? This is another thing that I had to calculate. I said, I got to get to the bottom of this, calculate these numbers. It's quite astronomical, especially if you're trading a lot. The more you're trading, the more all these little things add up. So let's just say that trader A buys a stock at 2020. The breakout's $20. 2020 is paying him 1% more, and he gets a little bit of slippage and sells the stock at 2120, up 6% from the pivot point. Okay, now trader B, he's a little slow on the trigger, and he chases stocks, or he's not as disciplined, and he pays on average 2060, or on this particular trade, he pays 2060, right? So that's the 3% up from the pivot. He's got 2% slippage. So now both traders do this 200 times a year. In this scenario, trader A makes 67% more profit than trader B. And that's just losing 1% on the buy side. Now, what about you're slow on the sell side? You got slippage off the high, off of your profits. Maybe you lose another percent there. How about stop losses? You're not quick to cut your losses. Maybe you lose 1 or 2% there. See the picture? It's all starting to add up. All these things add up. So there's all these things that's why discipline is so important for you to understand the math behind all this, because you don't realize it, but you're getting nickeled and dimed to death. I've been in a lot of different businesses, and when I go into a business and I become a partner in a business, the first thing I want to do is see all the numbers, and I want to see where is the money being spent, how much is coming in, what our profit margins are. I want to nail everything down and see, and then I start looking for places. The first thing I want to do is just to get it down to where the least amount of expenses, where everything that we're spending on is necessary, and get rid of all the unnecessary expenses. And you'll find there's a lot of times you go into a company and there's just all these little things that they didn't realize, but they're like, oh yeah, that's, just this and that. And before you know it, they all add up. And that's why the company's not profitable. It's all being spent on things that are completely almost overlooked. It's, again, when you add all this up, maybe you can get to that 2% in 13 days just from saving bets. And then another 13 days at 2% in addition to that, right? Because you do that organically. So there's so many ways when you put all this together. Let me show you another thing. The next thing is about opportunity cost. So not only did I take a look at the math behind everything and the waste and the commissions and the slippage and all this to really fine tune this and get the rules down, I started asking myself, okay, if I buy a stock, I don't want this to be about ego. I want this to be about making money. What is the most optimal way for me to get from point A to point B? And maybe I don't have to find a big winning stock if I can trade enough smaller winning stocks, because in my mind, I always said, gee, how many stocks go up 100% or 500 or 1,000%? The higher the return, the less number of stocks make that type of move. And here's the real key, the longer it takes. So that's time. That's opportunity, right? So I said, okay, I'm not going to guess on this. Let's just take a look. So I ran my computers and I just ran tens of thousands of trades coming out of breakouts. And then I looked at my own trades, and we're talking thousands of my own trades, and analyzed everything to find out where is the true opportunity as far as the price move and how long it takes. So if you get 100% move, well, okay, that's what if it takes you 100%, it takes you a year for a stock to go up to 100%. Well, if you could find 8 stocks that go up 10% in 2 months, you make 114%. You make more in 2 months than you would have made in the whole year if you waited for 100% move. 20% moves is 107%. So you're going to make that same move. Let me ask you a question. What's easier to find? Is it easier to find a stock that goes up 10% or a stock that goes up 100%? How long is it going to take for a stock to go up 100% on average versus a stock to go up 10%? So this is the question that I had to ask. So let me show you the results that we found. So when you adjust the gain, the net profit for opportunity, for how many days it takes, the results were eye-opening for me. And it can't, what happened, what we got back was that the 5 to 15% profit is actually your best opportunity because of the number of days that it takes to happen. When you start going into the 15 to 20 and higher up to the 40 to 50 and so forth, and my profits ranged between, the majority of them, between 5 and 50%. When you got above 60, they really started to roll off. That was a very rare occasion. So this was sort of my trading, my trading framework, if you will. And swing trades, they'll go up 20, 30 to 50%, and that's where they'll correct from there. That's sort of like the best move that you get out of in the short run. And this isn't every stock. Some make much bigger moves, but we're talking about generally speaking, on average, and then going and looking at all the opportunities and figuring out where you would have made, if you did 1,000 trades in this zone versus this zone, 5 to 15%, there's enough opportunities to make up for the much bigger gain. When you have the bigger gain, it takes so long to get there that you could have gotten all these shorter term trades. So the best opportunity is 5 to 15%. That's where you're going to make the most money in the shortest period of time. And then it moves up to the 15 to 20 and then rolls off after 40. It starts rolling off, and then it really rolls off a cliff. When you start getting up to 75, 100, it's very rare. So with all this, let me show you some of the lessons that we just learned from all this. Number one, you don't have to be in the market all the time. And this is why I want you to leave. This is one of the last things that I go over, or I'm going over with you here today, because I want you to leave the Master Trader program with really feeling a sense of empowerment and seeing that this isn't as hard as you think. It's going to take a lot of work, and it is going to be, it's grueling, and to get the expertise and to get the discipline and to get to that level, yes, it takes a lot of work and it takes time. But once you get there, you're going to see that, wow, this is really worth it, and it's duplicatable, and it is something that can be done consistently. So one, you don't have to be in the market all the time, all right? And you don't have to be fully invested. You could be 25% invested, and as long as you can get those number of trades done in the same amount of time as if you were fully invested, if you had to do 100 trades in 200 days of trading, well, if you got those 100 trades done with being 25% invested in each one of them and never ever having any more than 25% exposure, your return would be the exact same as if you were fully invested and did those same number of trades. No different. The only difference is that your asymmetrical volatility would be exposed to the downside. At any one time, you're only going to be exposed 25% versus being fully exposed. And that's where now your potential of drawdown is greater. So it's actually better to be in cash, in a lot of cash, and to keep, as long as you can get that number of positions off. Now, if it's at the expense of that, if you needed to do 500 trades and you couldn't find that many trades in that period of time, and you had to buy 5 of them at a time, 10 of them to be able to get those trades off, well, then it would take a longer time to get to that number, because now you're only doing one at a time. So you have to optimize that, optimize those numbers. But I'm giving you all the numbers. I'm giving you everything optimized already. Okay, so you don't have to get big gains for big returns. You don't have to have a single big winning stock. I've had years where I've been up hundreds of percent, and I never had a stock go up more than 20 or 30 or 40%. And make huge returns. It's about compounding. It's about turning it over. Now, can you get there with big moving stocks? Absolutely. And some people say, well, why are we looking at all these big giant movers and talking about the greatest winning stocks? Because we want to have opportunities. There's only so many stocks that are going to give us opportunities. So we want to increase that by having, if we could have an opportunity in the same name, that's even better. I'd love to have one stock that gives me opportunities over and over. Wouldn't it be great if just all you had to do was trade one stock, and it set up a base, it broke out, and you made a profit, and then it set up a base and it broke out and you made a profit. You just kept going in the same name. You wouldn't even have to screen for stocks. So that's the whole idea. The whole idea is to find a stock that's making a big move and then trade all the high probability setups. You might backstop the thing and turn it into the next Amazon, hold it for 10 years and you make 50,000% on your money. Or you might trade it and trade it 50 times in that amount of time and make a whole bunch of money simply from going in and out of it, making 10%, 20%, 30%, and compounding that. You can get to that result either in various ways. Okay, compounding effect. The more you make, the easier it is to make more. Okay, and it's also easier to lose more. So asymmetric, you have asymmetric leverage, asymmetric volatility. So as you're doing better, you're cutting off the downside and you're exposing yourself to the downside, to the upside. That's the whole key. The whole key is constantly exposing yourself to upside volatility, or you cut off the downside volatility. You're starting off your trade, cutting it off, say 5% loss. Okay, so now you've put yourself in a stock that hopefully has more than 5% upside potential, and you've cut off the downside. You have asymmetric volatility, right? Prior to that, you don't know. You don't know the stock could maybe go down 100%. You've capped the downside now. Okay, now the stock goes up. You're up 10%. You move your stop to break even. You've improved your worst case scenario. So now, again, you have now made asymmetric volatility your friend. You've now moved up the downside to where now your worst case scenario is break even. Now the stock moves up even more. You backstop the stock, maybe at 10%. You're up 20, you put it at 10. You've improved your worst case scenario again. It's constantly improving your worst case scenario, starting off with asymmetrical leverage, and then working that asymmetrical leverage up where you're at. Your worst case scenario is now a profitable scenario. All right. And lastly, saving bets can be a game changer. Saving bets. You got to look where all the areas where you're wasting, where you're breaking your rules, where you're not stopping out when you should. You're chasing stocks up. You're paying too much. So then when they come back, you're losing more than you would have lost if you paid less. All the areas, how much commission are you paying? All the various areas where you're losing these little bits and pieces, they all add up. Now, put all these things together and do all the technicals right and analyze the fundamentals and get all this right. And guess what? You got yourself a super trader. You got yourself a super trader and you got yourself super performance. That's how it's done. If this hasn't blown your mind with what we just talked about, then I don't know what else. I don't know what else I can share with you. Because to me, this is mind-blowing math. This is mind-blowing math, as has been the whole risk management section. So again, we're gonna take a break here. Let your head come down from the swelling, and we'll be back with some closing remarks. And I got to get Dave back, and he's going to come back, and we're going to give you some closing comments to leave with. Okay, talk to you. Okay. Hey, during this break, I'm going to take just a moment here. Hold on, just let me close my office door. I'm going to take a moment. I just want to take a moment to address a few questions because I know that mind-blowing math is going to stir up a lot of questions and a lot of misunderstandings. So I did. Bob was looking at some of the questions here, and actually I forwarded a couple here. And I see, Bob, you were addressing what was his comment? VJ, you said?
Yeah, VJ.
Yeah. So the questions, I know that a lot of times we get questions like, okay, well, that's only 25%, so it's not taking into account the compounding. We'll only get 25% of the return. But actually, no, that's the whole point of it. The whole point of it is that it's taking into account for that, the fact that we're only using 25%. So that return is based on the 25%. Some people also, comment or have commented that, in this market that, you're not able to get those opportunities. There's been so much whipsawing. That's absolutely incorrect. I mean, it's so incorrect. It couldn't be any more incorrect. First of all, I'm up over 300% this year. Okay. And so, I mean, if you were just up 10% of what I'm up, you'd be up 30%, 32, 34% right now. There's so many opportunities. It's been unbelievable. As a matter of fact, this math is exactly what has worked in this particular market. And it works in virtually every market because you're going to get a lot of those small gains. Where you're going wrong, okay, where I can tell you, 99% of everybody who makes that type of comment is going wrong, is that you're invested, so you're in the market all the time. Your downside is the problem. You're not being selective enough, or and you have to remember something. We went through 4 days of curriculum, and there's no way that you're able to process all this information and come out of this being good at all these different things that I talked about. But guess what? I'm good at every single one of them. My game is tight from A to Z. Every single thing that we talked about, I invented, or I perfected someone else's invention and made it mine. Every single thing that you probably can't even remember. You won't even be able to remember probably 5% of what I brought to you in these 4 days. 100% of it I know inside out. I live it, and I execute it near perfectly every single day. And you'll get to that. You will get to that point, but you're not going to get there overnight. So don't look at any one of these principles and think that this is the magic. I mean, I'm sure there's certain principles and the light bulb goes off and you're like, wow, this is like life-changing right here. That once we get to this point in the seminar, the most common phrase, what are the two most common words that we hear when we get to this point by the hundreds, Bob?
The comment here is
no, what are the two words at this point in the seminar every year? What are the two most common words that people say?
They're blown away, mind-changing, life-changing, rather.
Life-changing. Yeah, life-changing.
Yeah.
Those are the two most common words. Life-changing. Every year, those are all of a sudden all the comments come. This is life-changing. Yes, but what's really life-changing in your trading is all of it. I'm sure one of these concepts is going to set off a bell, and it's going to be a major thing for you that will, maybe you'll realize what you're doing wrong. But you have to realize that the real key to this is not finding that one thing that you relate to. It's putting together all the things that you don't relate to. Okay. It's so easy to gravitate to what is familiar or what you relate to or what you think is the right thing for you, change for you to make. But trust me, you're not a good teacher. If you were a great of a teacher, you'd be a master, you wouldn't be here. I'm a better teacher to teach you than you are to teach you. And so you need to go, you need it all. You need it all, A to Z. If you want to get to the point where and do what I'm doing or what Mark Ritchie's doing or David Ryan's doing, William O'Neill's doing, has done in his career, all these people have a full game. Michael Jordan's got a full, he's a pro, he's a consummate pro. The best in the business to have from A to Z, they're tight in everything. And maybe they're better at certain things, but they're pretty good at pretty much everything in their profession. So that's the thing, is getting that full rounded, being that rounded trader where you round off all of this. You might say, oh yeah, well, I don't need to do post analysis and I don't need to look at my numbers. Bullshit. Yes, you do. You need it all. And if you start going, well, I know what I need and what I don't need. That's the definition of being uncoachable. Like that was how I changed when I went into shooting. I went to competition shooting. I started off thinking that this is a very simple thing. You take a gun, you aim it at a target, you shoot. You just have to learn how to shoot straight and shoot fast. But I realized after a couple of years of coming in 28th in a competition that, you know what? I really, not only did I suck at it, but I also sucked at coaching myself. I sucked at learning because I was closed-minded. I thought that I knew how to decipher the good information from the bad information, when in fact, it was the information that I thought I didn't need is what I needed the most. And then when I went to a really great coach, and I went to the best in the world, literally the number one best shooter on the face of the planet was my coach. I went to him and said, okay, I am literally going to just anything that he says that I disagree with, I'm going to immediately, that's the part that I'm going to work on the hardest. I'm going to go for all the stuff that I don't agree with is the stuff that I'm going to take the most stock in. And that's when everything changed, because now I was open-minded to the things that my cup did not have in it. You see, when you start seeing and you see something, you go, oh yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, that sounds right. See, that's not the lesson. That's not the lesson, because you already know that means. If it makes sense to you, that's something that you already know and agree with. It's the stuff that you go, that doesn't sound right. That's where the potential is. So not to ignore the things that the light bulbs that go off. There's going to be things where you can relate to and you go, that's exactly what I do. Yes, that's what I've been doing wrong. I see. That's the correction. Great. That's wonderful. But again, you need a full game. It's not luck that Mark Ritchie, in his bad years is up 30-40%, in his good years is up 300-400. It's not luck that I've had 10-12 triple digit years in the last 20 years and have averaged the returns that I've had. None of this is luck. It comes from, because we all had trouble starting off. We were just like you. We didn't come out of the box being a great trader. We had to improve each little area until we had a full entire game. Until every aspect of it was tight. I don't have weaknesses anymore. I make mistakes, but I don't have real material weaknesses. My game is tight from top to bottom. And that's the key. That's the key of being great at something, being professional. So I can't go over all the comments. I can't even read them, while things are going here. But, I did see right at the end here, Bob was keying in on a few comments that he just sent over to me on Skype. And I just want to make sure everybody understands that math that we just went over is perfectly correct. I know some of you might think, that's doesn't sound right, or, oh, yeah, it sounds easier than it is. Yeah, you're right. It's not easy. It's not easy. I don't want anybody to think that this is easy. I'm saying it's easier than it appears. It's easier than it appears. The real problem is not getting the return. It's staying away from the bad trades, the just this one times, it's thinking you have to be fully invested. It's all these things that you've been conditioned by listening to mediocre people and people that never could trade in the first place, and listening to money managers and people on CNBC and all these people are never going to teach you the right way to do it, because they can't do it themselves. If they could do it, they'd be doing it. It'd be leading by example. So again, the real key is not losing. See, that's this whole day is all about risk management. It's all about, if you don't lose, you don't have to gain much. That's the key. You see, or you can go and find a stock and be in the SPAC and this one and that one and Bitcoin and make a ton of money, and then have a big drawdown, and you'll get nowhere. When it's all said and done, you'll have a moderate return. You'll have a moderate return. But the fact is that you could be in the market for 13 days, out of the year with 25% of your money and make 8% on that 25%. Okay, if you don't think you can do that, well, then you probably can't even throw a basketball and miss the backboard, because that's about as easy as it can get. And guess what? If you did that, you would beat the S&P 500 by almost 3 times. 13 days, 2%, 8% of your 8% return on 25% of your money, 13 times in a year. You think you can do that? If you can't leave with that thinking you can do that, well, then I guess triple digit returns is completely out of the question. But that's about as doable as it gets. Can't break it down any more than that. So anyway, we got to go back here. I got to get prepared here. We're gonna do the next session here. We're finishing up. So
yeah.
Let me run. Bye.